Okay, we're going. So, hey everybody. Um, I was just watching a couple of guys I know who have a podcast talk to Dr. Michael Sala, the like ET UFO disclosure guy out of Australia. Um, and I just learned listening to him that I guess he had an academic career that he lost over his involvement with that stuff. So anyway, he's somebody. If you're not familiar with him, you can check it out. Salla, Dr. Michael Sala. He, he talks to people about the whole UFO ET cover up thing that's obviously been going on with governments all over the world for really actively since post 1947 Roswell and all that stuff, but apparently before then as well. Anyway, and I've been feeling a certain amount of frustration looking at that whole phenomenon and sort of like how Christians, um, Christ followers, relate, or I think in most cases refuse to relate to that subject. I've heard a lot of Christians say there's no such thing as ETs, and it's all demons basically. It's all sort of extra dimensional phenomena. It's angels and demons basically. It all has to um, fit strictly into um, the what we've been presented with as the canonical Bible, and that's a whole nother question. That's just like that would be a very big distraction from my main point here. But that's something I'm going to be talking about. Sort of what has defined the canon for Christians. But anyway, yeah, I'm I'm and then there's that. There's on the Christian side. There's that. There's ETs don't exist. It's all a scam. It's just designed to cover up the return of the fallen ones. And I think there are elements of truth to this. I really do. But I just think it's more nuanced. Okay, and so that's that side. Um, and I think these people are also saying that I it's weird. I don't know what the Christian line is on like UFOs, because if these are just angels and demons, like why do they need craft? They can just go where they want at will, right? Like if they're not physical beings, why do they need material craft? And that just seems like such an overwhelmingly obvious part of this phenomenon. Like I don't think there's a whole lot of percentage in trying to deny that there's something going on with that. Have there been plenty of frauds and fakes and psyops and stuff? Sure, of course, always. Um, as in all cases with a topic like this, with a very significant topic like this, it's going to be extremely manipulated, extremely massaged, extremely handled by, you know, the intelligence agencies, the media, just all that, and the cabal underneath them. But the bottom line there is that I think there's just mountains of evidence. There are mountains of evidence that uh, physical craft have been coming here, and I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so that's the Christian side of this disjuncture, this total disjuncture between the worlds of like ET enthusiast, UFO enthusiast, kind of people, like the people who go to the conferences and whatnot, and Christians. So then on the other side, I haven't been. I've that's this is a subject that I have followed, the whole UFO ET thing. I've followed it with a lot of interest for oh gosh, probably since the early 2000s, something like that. I saw Dr. Stephen Greer's event like right after he did it, and it blew my mind in 2001. For anyone who hasn't seen that, that's a pretty compelling bunch of whistleblower testimony, I'd say, at the National Press Club in Washington D.C. Um, and then uh, totally overshadowed by 9/11 and all that stuff. Just like I'm sure there was no connection there. But anyway, so I this is something I've followed for a while, and there's something there. There just is. I get it that Christians get really uncomfortable with this topic. A lot of Christians do, because it isn't really covered, certainly in, as I say, our canonical, Western, sort of Roman Catholic, ultimately derived Bible. But it does seem to me that there's something there, and what I see on that side is like a total preponderance of New Age belief, a real paucity of Christianity, and what I see in this entire phenomenon is this just the typical checkerboard pattern. The typical sort of, what is it, totalitarian two step or whatever. Like, you've got one side that's allowed to say part of the truth, but they have to deny this other part of the truth, and then you've got this other side that's allowed to say the other part of the truth, but then they have to, you see what I'm saying? So it's like a it's like a four quadrant chart, where things are always, here or here, but they're never there's never the Venn diagrams never there's never substantial overlap in this Venn diagram. Sorry, I'm mixing my metaphors, squares and circles, but you get my point. Um, it's that way on purpose. It's so we cannot come to a holistic understanding both of the problem that we face, the problems that we face, you know, in this world, on this planet, and how we're going to get out of them. That's what we're never supposed to put together, because so on the ET enthusiast, UFO enthusiast side, boy, you'll hear all kinds of crazy raps, about whatever, different, they get into channeling, which, I mean, that's just a crapshoot. You don't know what's on the other end of that. Yeah, it could be some ET entity, could be some demon, could be, Satan himself. There's just, that's a roll of the dice, and that's really big among those people. Channeling, which, any serious Christian has got to just turn a very wary eye towards. That's not. It's contraindicated by Scripture, shall we say? Mediumship, channeling, stuff like that, because, well, like I say, it's a crapshoot. So there's that. There's this whole, just like vague verbiage about the Christ consciousness. They'll go that far. I think it's totally cool among those people to identify as like Buddhist or whatever, but it mostly just seems like this new agey, you know, kind of free for all in terms of their spiritual take. And I realize that's a huge generalization. You can't say all, ET, UFO people think this way, but you can notice patterns, right? And I went to one of those conferences once, actually a conference on the secret space program, a topic which I would totally urge Christian truth seekers to engage with. There's something there. There's definitely something there. There are many lines of evidence pointing in that direction. But again, not going to kind of get lost in the weeds on that one. But that is a useful sort of hyperlink for this conversation. But so I went to a conference, and I talked. I heard just it was held at this beautiful hotel that had been built by the Works Progress Administration. A lot of amazing American stuff was built at that time. It's just kind of heartbreaking when you think what's happened to us. But anyway, that was like a bunch of native stone that they made this hotel out of. Just magnificent. The great room was is it's the Pere Marquette Lodge in I guess Illinois. Yeah, Southern Illinois. But anyway, that's where this conference was. Journey to Truth. They're great guys, Aaron and Tyler. But yeah, they were the guys I was listening to talk to Dr. Sala just now. But I went to this conference back in oh gosh, when was it? 2022, I think it was their first one. Awesome, amazing experience. But a couple of times I kind of gently, people would offhandedly, sort of make disparaging comments. Like for instance, there was a statue of a French Catholic explorer in the front of this place back when America was not collectively ashamed to be Christian. Built, like I said, this place in the 30s under WPA. But there was this statue. I guess Pere Marquette, Pere's father, right? So Father Marquette. He must have been the guy who, ministered to these indigenous Americans there, Indians there, and yeah, I think he was part of the founding of that place, which was totally a Catholic effort. I mean, Illinois, French Catholic. You can tell by the name Illinois, right? But anyway, some guy was making this disparaging comment about him, about I can't even remember the sort of the gist of it. It doesn't really, that stuff is so interchangeable to me at this point. It's so generic. It's so easy to take some cheap shot like that against Jesus, against Christians, and against Christianity. It's a commonplace in this culture. It's super uninteresting to me. But I just kind of gently pushed back. Wasn't trying to get into a fight with the guy. We were, eating lunch together, and we had both stayed late, so like we were the only guys left there, so something like that, or we were having a snack. I can't remember. Early evening time, maybe. And he just kind of stiffened up a little bit. I was just basically saying, well, there's Jesus is pretty cool, man. And he just kind of stiffened, and I was like, it hit me in that moment, like, yeah, these people don't ever talk about Jesus practically. Every now and then, one of those people, on those podcasts or shows or whatever, will make mention of our Lord and Savior, but rarely. And so that's the other side of it, So there's this, you've got Christians, a lot of churchians who wouldn't know a chemtrail, and I can point this in that direction. I don't know if you're really going to be able to see it. It's hideous here today, just wretched. I'm not shutting up about this. I'm not shutting up till they stop spraying me. So, if you don't want to hear about it, I'm probably not the guy for you. Can't believe more people aren't talking about this. I can't believe people aren't having demonstrations on the street like 24/7. Like, stop spraying us. Like, well, it's just, that's how degraded terrestrial humanity is. It's pathetic. But anyway, sorry, lost my train of thought. I'm gonna stop, see where I am, and get back to it. Just a minute. Yeah, so back to where I was. So on the one side, you've got Christians who, at least in name, in theory, they get the solution right. They do praise His name. So that's that's like what I was saying. Like they are allowed to get that part right. They don't ever get to name the problem though. Like, what's actually going on here? Like, what's happening in this place? What is happening in this place? Like, can we trust our governments? Can we trust the news media? Well, from my perspective, if after everything that we've lived through, and I've lived through all of these false flags to start wars in my life, and these horrible black ops in places like El Salvador and Southeast Asia and South America and all these different places. Um, and and COVID, hello. I mean, just this monstrous in your face global crime against humanity. That one was next level, because they did it everywhere to everybody at once. Uh, was there any place that was exempt from the COVID regime? I didn't hear about it. I didn't hear about it, and I mean, at most, certain nations carved out a bit more breathing room for their people than others, like Belarus. That dude was pretty gnarly. The guy who wears suits all the time or whatever. He he didn't give him an inch. I'm not sure how he managed actually to keep breathing in and out. I think he did, and I'm not. He must have. He must be giving him something else. But anyway, on that he apparently did not budge, and that place didn't close at all. But pretty much, like the whole world shut down. Like, so if you haven't seen that that there's this apparatus, like the apparatus showed itself, and the apparatus is always going to be most effective if it doesn't have to show itself. But it did. It showed itself really, really plainly with COVID. And if you haven't seen that yet, if you haven't understood the coordination of that at every level, every single level, what the media was telling you, what the schools were doing with children, what all corporations did. I mean, everybody and their dog put out some kind of statement about how they were there for you and they were concerned about your health and blah blah blah. Like I need that from corporations. It was all so laughable and soft-headed and idiocratic. Um, Side note: one of my crusades is resisting idiocracy. Like, people need to read. Y'all need to read. We need to read. We need to, chill out with the screens and stuff. We need to discipline our minds. But anyway, bottom line there is, well, if post COVID you haven't put a few things together, if you haven't even had, if you haven't even been given pause to reflect and wonder, if things are really as the people on the screens are telling you, well, you're very unlikely to be watching this. Yeah. So, um, so that's okay. Enjoy your Truman Show. Um, so bottom line, we've got, in my view, another completely manufactured false dichotomy between recognition of these problems that occur, because they know they can't stop all the people from seeing chemtrails, and they can't stop people from being aware of the terrible stuff that's going on with children and stuff like that. But they want to separate that from any kind of solution, as much as they want to contain those two things as much as they possibly can. And Jesus is the solution. He's Jesus is it, man. He's the only game in town. I cannot state this forcefully enough. This has been so unequivocally revealed to me. Um, and I think if people will engage with Scripture, particularly the Gospels, um, and with prayer meditation, um, I, I think I think people will come to the same conclusion. He's it. He's the only thing. I'm not saying that there was nothing of value in any of the other traditions. I mean, corrupt as these beings who messed with our development, with our history, were and continue to be, these fallen ones, the Watchers, the demons, Satan and his horde. Um, Humans have always been the ones carrying these things, right? So like we're God's children. So you know, I, in my view, if you look at Hinduism in the main, that's demon worship. Like, I don't think there's any question about that. It is. Um, Kali's a demon. Vishnu's a demon. Um, you know, some of them may have some beneficent kind of aspects. I guess Ganesh. seems a bit like that, but I don't really know. Haven't studied it that deeply because I just oh dagnabbit, I'm being called. Hold on. But bottom line, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and the dark occult overlords of this mess on this planet. They know that. They know that. That's why they want to keep you from him. And that, in my view, to kind of wrap up this segment of my talk about this, is what has informed this, what looks to me like a very obvious artificial divide that's been constructed by the people managing this narrative, um, between the New Agers who recognize that, hey, there's something going on here, it's material, and it's we've got visitors that seem to be coming here from these other places, and then the Christians who give honor and praise where it's due. But I mean, ETs, chemtrails, like the whole occult underpinnings of stuff. Like mainline churchians, man, they're not talking about this stuff. They're not talking about this stuff, and it's a real bummer too, because the truther movement. I use that dang word. The truth movement, the disclosure movement about everything that's really happening. With the absolute pioneers of this stuff, like Ted Gunderson and Bill Cooper and Kathy O'Brien. Those three immediately come to mind, right? Like a lot of times they were speaking in churches. Fritz Springmeier, heavy Christian influence at the beginning of the whole truth thing. And somehow, like, this new age thing has just been sort of universally injected into it. And I'm like, well, I smell a rat, of course, but surprise, surprise, right? Bottom line, again, don't fall for it. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. It's nonsense. I think the Roman Catholic Church is a really, really weird, super compromised institution, and they have doubtless got some really dark motives for this. But the Roman Catholics, I'll give them this, they at least say, like, hey, we're interested in spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ to ETs, and I'm like, 100%, yeah. So um, that's really what this comes down to. That's where we end up with this. Like, we're supposed to minister unto the nations. Like, that doesn't just stop with this world. We're supposed to bring the salvific power of Jesus Christ to, you know, ET creatures of every shape and size. Why not? Are they children of God or not? We've got to start somewhere. And then we run up against the reality that so far, the entirety of this relationship, that I believe has been happening explicitly for, oh gosh, somewhere around 100 years now, close to it, between terrestrial humanity and these other beings from other worlds, um, some of whom appear to look like us, a lot of them look like us. Some of them are reptilian, some of whom are, these gray aliens, all different kinds of shapes and sizes of creatures. But the entirety of that relationship has been managed by Satan worshipping, child abusing psychopaths. The, the evidence for this is overwhelming. It's not really my job to regurgitate all of this evidence. There's so much stuff out there. If people will see it, you'll see it. If you won't, you won't. And nothing I say will change you. But I can definitely, I suppose, sometime I could put together just a document of what I find to be some of the most useful truth tellers out there. But the stuff is copiously documented. Like, it's happening. It is. It's happening, and you can deal with that or not. But it's not gonna make it go away. Your refusal to deal with it, and my overall message with this channel is Christians get in the game. Christians need to get in the game. You are in a spiritual war and you have no understanding of the contours of the battlefield or the force that you're facing, their disposition, the weapons that they're bringing to bear. Nothing. Like Christians, the fact that Christian churches are not talking about the chemtrails, that tells you everything you need to know. The fact that Christian churches go along with this nightmare unfolding in Gaza, that tells you everything you need to know. They're completely converged. These power structures are so corrupt, it's just kind of mind-boggling. Um, anyway, bottom line, bottom line is these guys, Dr. Sala talking with the Journey to Truth Boys, they were talking about how there appears to maybe be some kind of big disclosure event coming in 2027. That's what he was saying. Is that a thing or not? Who knows? I mean, certainly they've said things in hot mics in the Congress that I never thought were going to be revealed. So my mind has been blown the last 10-ish years, 8-10 years. And the world's so crazy, and they're always doing all these psyops, and people are hurting. The economy's in the toilet, blah blah blah. People don't even have the energy to engage with this subject. I guess it used to seem so fascinating to a lot of people, but it seems like now people are like totally accredited witnesses are in front of Congress saying yes, we have bodies of ET beings, on ice, and the craft and the technology, and we've had all these interactions, and people are like, oh, yawn. A population can only a note to the oligarchs. A population can only handle so many psyops at once. So it's just kind of their saturation has been reached. People don't care anymore. Which is a shame, because actually this is a very, very significant topic. And the bottom line is, I'm not following the guys who print the money into space. I'm not following the guys who start the wars into space. I'm not following the guys who did COVID into space. Nope, that's not happening. It's a hard no for me. They were the kind of the tenor of these guys' conversation was, like, oh, what's coming and what are we going to do? And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care what, alien invasion, false flag they pull, because obviously if aliens were going to invade us, they would have done it by now. Like, what would have stopped them? Why would they have waited for terrestrial humanity to reach like technological parity with them in black programs before they did? Like, it's absurd. It's absurd. That's not a thing. It will be, what is that, Project Bluebeam or whatever, it'll be all that nonsense with the holograms and the psychotronic weaponry and everything else. And it's super freaky. You got to stay real close to Jesus Christ, because he will defeat all of it. He's master of all of it. He's Lord of all of it. That's the good news, and that's what they don't want you to come to. So I'm super interested in being some kind of bridge. I'm actually thinking about like talking with people, doing some interviews. There are, I'd love to be a bridge between worlds, because Christians want to go back to Genesis and take all of that stuff literally, and it's like, I'm sorry, God gave me a brain, like I see lots of evidence in the geological record, for instance, that the exactly what's described in like Genesis is a creation myth. That's okay. It's okay to have a creation myth. I don't have to literally believe all of that stuff. That is not the meat and potatoes of Christianity to me. I mean, good Lord, people. Plug your brains in. What did Jesus come to teach us? He came to teach us how to treat each other. That's what he wants to see. He wants to see us love each other. Christians, so-called Christians, they will focus on every other thing accept the central aspect of his message, which is, man, we're just supposed to love each other. Like it's because that's the hard part. Because people are a pain. People are a pain in the ass. I get it, but we need to. And anyway, thanks for listening. If you've made it this far, and God bless, and I'll see you with the next one.